It was Christmas Eve, but nothing inside the tiny queen's apartment felt holy or warm. The colored lights Maddie had taped around the window blinked weakly, as if they were fighting for their life just like she was. 7 months pregnant, exhausted from her shift at the 24-hour bookstore, she stood in the dim bathroom staring at her pale reflection. Her lower lip trembled. She clutched her old phone in both hands, the screen glowing against her shaking palms. A number she had saved but never dared to call hovered at the top, unknown but familiar. She didn't know it was her father. She only knew her chest tightened every time she looked at it, as if some part of her still wanted to believe someone out there cared. Her breath fogged the bathroom mirror. Maybe I should just call, she whispered. Her voice cracked. Her baby shifted inside her, a small reminder that she wasn't alone, but she felt painfully alone. Outside the bathroom, the apartment door slammed open. Maddie froze. Brandon's footsteps staggered across the living room floor, heavy and irritated. She could smell him before she saw him, the bitter mix of whiskey and some floral perfume she didn't own. The same scent that had been clinging to his clothes more and more lately. "Maddie," he barked, slurring her name. "Why the hell is your phone off? I called you." She swallowed. She had turned it off earlier to stop herself from checking the threatening messages someone had been sending her for weeks. Messages she never told him about. "I was showering," she called weakly. He pushed the bathroom door open with his shoulder. His eyes were sharp despite the alcohol, the kind of sharp that always made Maddie's stomach twist. His coat hung open, revealing his dress shirt wrinkled and half untucked. She had seen that look before, rage looking for a target. "What are you doing?" he snapped, noticing the glowing phone in her hands. "Who were you calling?" "No one," she whispered. "I was just..." He lunged forward and snatched the phone away. The screen lit up again, showing the number she had hovered over for days. "Who the hell is this?" Brandon snarled. "It's nothing, Brandon, please." He stepped closer, towering over her as panic crawled up her throat. Maddie backed into the sink, her hands instinctively covering her stomach. "You calling some guy behind my back, huh?" he hissed. "On Christmas Eve?" "No," she choked out. "I swear, I wasn't." He didn't wait for the rest. With a sudden, violent shove, Brandon slammed her backward. Her head hit the mirror with a sharp crack. The glass fractured instantly, spiderwebbing beneath her blood. Her vision blurred, a ringing spreading through her skull. She tasted iron. Her knees buckled as she slid to the floor, her cheek scraping the cold tile. Somewhere far away, she heard Brandon's voice, angry, terrified, defensive, but it faded under the growing roar in her ears. Her last waking thought was of her unborn child. And then, she felt the floor vanish beneath her. And in that collapsing moment, someone else was already listening. 2 years before that, Christmas Eve, everything looked different. Maddie Brooks wasn't the exhausted, frightened woman curled on a bathroom floor. Back then, she was a bright-eyed 4-year-old shelving books in a quiet Brooklyn shop, her hair in a loose bun, her world uncomplicated. She believed that pain was something people eventually outgrew. She believed love healed. She believed men like Brandon Hale were blessings. She was wrong, but she didn't know that yet. The first time Brandon walked into the bookstore, he came in wearing a charcoal coat and holding a black umbrella dripping melted snow. He shook it gently, smiled at her, and apologized for the mess, as if courtesy came naturally to him. Maddie remembered thinking his smile looked warm, almost shy. She guided him toward the business section, noticing how he carried himself calm, confident, someone who always got what he wanted. He returned 2 days later, then a week after, always with a new excuse. Needed a notebook, wanted a recommendation, happened to be nearby. Over time, nearby sounded less and less believable, but she didn't mind. She was lonely then. Her father had disappeared from her life a decade earlier without explanation. Her mother died young, and Maddie believed she had been chosen for abandonment. So when a man like Brandon paid attention, she clung to the feeling like a lifeline. He took her on dates in Manhattan, small rooftop cafes, dim jazz lounges, walks along the waterfront where the skyline glimmered like a promise. He always paid without hesitation, always opened doors, always asked about her dreams. He laughed at her jokes, called her sunshine, and told her he'd never felt this way before. It felt like a movie, and she didn't realize movies were edited. 3 months into dating, he convinced her to move into his apartment. "It'll be easier," he said. "We're practically living together already." He kissed her forehead, and the gesture disarmed her completely. She didn't see the small ways he rearranged her life, asking why she needed certain friends, suggesting she quit her second job, encouraging her to rest more while he handled everything. At first it sounded like love. Later she learned the difference between caring and controlling. But the real shift began the night Brandon found an old envelope in her drawer, one addressed in her father's handwriting. It was the only letter Maddie had never thrown away. He lifted it between his fingers and laughed coldly. "You still think of the man who walked out on you?" "He didn't walk out," she whispered. "Not exactly. My mom never told me the full story." "Well," Brandon muttered, "some men just aren't meant to be fathers." The comment stung, but she swallowed it. She always swallowed things back then. Not long after that, his moods changed. One day, he'd bring her takeout from her favorite diner. The next, he'd criticize how she folded laundry. He'd pull her close in public and push her away at home. He studied her reactions, cataloged them, adjusted. She adapted without realizing she was shrinking. The first bruise came 6 months before she got pregnant. Brandon had been pacing in the kitchen, furious about a failed investment. Maddie had reached out, trying to calm him, and he shoved her away without thinking. She hit the counter, gasping. He apologized immediately, hugging her tightly, kissing her hair, swearing he would never, ever do something like that again. She believed him because she needed to. But the next bruise came easier. And the next? By the time she realized she was pregnant, Maddie was already trapped inside a life she hadn't agreed to. Brandon's joy lasted 2 days before it turned into something else: disinterest, annoyance, resentment. He told her she was too emotional, too sensitive, too fragile. He stopped coming home early. He stopped hiding the perfume on his clothes. He stopped pretending he loved her. And yet, she stayed. Not for him. For the tiny heartbeat she heard in the doctor's office, the one that made her cry in a way she hadn't cried since childhood. She stayed because she thought pain was temporary. She stayed because she didn't know she was being watched. And somewhere in Manhattan, her father listened to a recording that would change everything. The wedding happened on a Thursday afternoon, the kind of day people forget unless something goes terribly wrong. Maddie remembered the sharp wind, the overcast sky, and how the courthouse clerk barely looked up while stamping their license. There were no flowers, no family, no music, just the hollow echo of her own footsteps as she followed Brandon down the marble hallway. She told herself it was romantic in its simplicity. She told herself love didn't need an audience. But the truth was simpler. She didn't want to lose him. Brandon had chosen everything, from the date to the rings to the color of her dress, pale beige, because he said white washed her out. She didn't argue. She rarely argued anymore. His voice filled every room, loud or soft, and hers felt smaller with each conversation. Still, when he pulled her close for the courthouse photo, she smiled. She looked happy enough to fool the world, even if she couldn't fool herself. After the ceremony, he took her to a small restaurant in Midtown. It was too expensive for her taste, the kind of place where the waiters carried themselves like royalty and the silverware gleamed under dim lights. Brandon ordered a bottle of wine without asking what she wanted. He talked more to his phone than to her. Every so often, he'd glance up, smirk, and say something like, "See, Maddie, you're lucky. Most women would kill for this life." She nodded, believing she should be grateful, even as her stomach twisted. Later that evening, they moved into his sleek apartment. It was bigger than anything she'd lived in before. Polished concrete floors, glass shelves, every surface immaculate. But nothing in it belonged to her. When she tried to hang a framed photo of her mother, Brandon paused, frowned, and told her it didn't match the decor. So she left it in a drawer. Eventually, she stopped trying to add her own touches. What Maddie didn't know was that Brandon had already prepared the building blocks of control. He transferred all utilities into his name, handled their joint bank account, and convinced her to quit her second job at the cafe because it made him look like he couldn't provide. His tone was soft, seemingly affectionate, but the implication was sharp. She quit the next day. The isolation deepened. He monitored her schedule, questioned every outing, commented on friends he didn't like. Soon, she stopped seeing those friends. It wasn't worth the arguments. But the worst part came 6 months into the marriage. Long before she saw the first bruise in the mirror, Brandon began keeping secrets. His phone was glued to his hand. He stepped into the hallway to take calls. He returned from work with tension carved into his jaw. When she asked gentle questions, he snapped. When she asked firmer questions, he went silent. The emotional distance grew into a physical one. Maddie slept closer to the edge of the bed each night, learning how to hold herself small so she wouldn't upset him. Her nightmares began around the same time, dreams of drowning, running, bleeding, dreams where she screamed but no one heard her. She never imagined that someone actually was listening. Because somewhere across the city, in a dim, windowless office where screens flickered with encrypted data, her father, Captain Ryan Brooks, leaned back in his chair, staring at a name glowing on his monitor. Brandon Hale. A name that had appeared before in investigations tied to illegal transfers, laundering networks, and offshore accounts. He didn't know yet that the man he hunted was his daughter's husband. But he was about to find out. And when he did, the first life to shatter wouldn't be Brandon's. By the time Maddie reached her first anniversary with Brandon, she no longer recognized the woman she had been before him. She didn't dress the same, didn't speak the same, didn't even breathe the same. Everything about her life had been quietly bent into his shape. And the strangest part? He made it look like love. It started subtly. Brandon would comment on her clothes softly, sweetly, as if helping. "Black makes you look washed out, babe. Try the blue one." Or, "You don't need that sweater, I'll buy you something nicer." At first, she took it as kindness. But over time, her closet became a reflection of Brandon's taste, not hers. Next came the routines. He wanted breakfast exactly at 7:15. He wanted quiet after 9. He wanted her to text when she left the apartment and again when she arrived. "It's for your safety," he'd whisper, kissing her forehead. "You never know with this city." And though the words sounded protective, his tone was possession, dressed as concern. One afternoon, Maddie decided to surprise him at work with homemade cookies. She felt proud, excited, even thinking maybe small acts of love could restore what felt broken. She took the subway to Manhattan, passed through the towering glass lobby of Brandon's firm, and waited. That was when she saw it. Brandon stepping out of an elevator with a young intern, Sienna Ward. Sienna laughed at something, he said, her hand brushing his arm, and Brandon didn't pull away. He looked relaxed, lighter, happier than Maddie had seen him in months. Maddie froze behind a marble pillar. The cookies in her hands felt suddenly childish. She told herself it was innocent. She told herself Brandon would never do what her fears suggested. But something inside her cracked, just slightly, a hairline fracture, the beginning of something she didn't yet have the courage to face. When Brandon saw her, surprise flashed across his face, followed by irritation. "What are you doing here?" he asked. Not a hug, not a smile, not even a warm greeting, just annoyance. Sienna excused herself politely, but Maddie saw the confusion in her eyes. On the ride home, Brandon lectured her about showing up unannounced and embarrassing him. Maddie pressed her hands together tightly, fearing that if she let go, her heart would fall apart right there in the back seat of the Uber. That night, she cried in the bathroom with the faucet running, hiding the sound the way she had learned to hide everything else. But the real danger came later. Brandon's moods turned sharper, his temper unpredictable. The smallest things irritated him. A misplaced glass, a burnt piece of toast, a question asked at the wrong moment. He started sleeping at odd hours, pacing the apartment, speaking in hushed tones on the phone. He told her it was work stress. He told colleagues it was marriage stress. He told himself nothing at all, because deep inside, Brandon was drowning in something far darker. The financial crimes he'd entangled himself in. Transfers that didn't add up, clients who weren't really clients, money routed through offshore accounts. And every transaction whispered one truth, that he was in too deep to walk away. Maddie didn't know any of that, but she felt the shift. She felt him pulling away, retreating into a shadowy world she couldn't enter. Her instincts screamed to run, but where would she go? Her life, her money, her safety, they all belonged to him. And then one night, while Brandon slept heavily beside her, she unlocked his laptop. She hadn't meant to. She'd only intended to move it off the bed. But the screen lit up unlocked, open to an email thread she wasn't meant to see. There were numbers, offshore transfers, hidden accounts, names she didn't recognize, and then a subject line that made her blood go cold. "Hale, the Brooks connection changes everything." Before she could process the meaning, a shadow moved behind her. Brandon was awake, and his voice, low and lethal, whispered, "What do you think you're doing?" For a long moment, Maddie couldn't breathe. The laptop glowed in front of her, the offshore accounts still open on the screen, the cursor blinking like a warning she should have listened to long ago. Behind her, Brandon's shadow loomed silent, heavy, dangerous. She didn't turn around. She couldn't. Her throat tightened the way it always did before panic took over. "What?" Brandon repeated, slower this time. "Do you think you're doing?" I wasn't reading anything," she whispered. "I just moved it. It turned on." Silence. Thick, suffocating silence. Then Brandon stepped forward, closing the laptop with a soft click that felt louder than any slam. He stood too close, his breath hot against her ear. Maddie's hands began to shake. She pressed them against her thighs, hoping he wouldn't notice the tremor. "You know what I hate?" he murmured. "When people lie to me." Her stomach dropped. She backed away, but he followed each step, the way a predator cornered its prey. Maddie's pulse pounded in her temples. Her baby kicked inside her, sensing the danger she couldn't escape. "I didn't mean to open anything," she said again, her voice breaking. "Brandon, please, I swear." His hand struck faster than she could finish. The slap sent her stumbling into the dresser, a sharp pain shooting up her arm as she caught herself. She tasted blood. Her cheek burned. For a moment, her vision blurred. But when it cleared, Brandon was still standing there, chest rising and falling, jaw clenched, eyes blazing with something darker than anger. Regret? No. Fear. Because Maddie had seen something she wasn't supposed to. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "You don't understand the stress I'm under. You don't understand what you could have ruined." He pointed a trembling finger at her. "Those emails aren't your business." She pressed a hand to her cheek, fighting tears. "Then why did the subject say Brooks Connection? Why is my name?" "Shut up," he snapped. The force of his voice made her flinch. He inhaled sharply, as if trying to regain control, then softened his tone with frightening precision. "Look, babe, you're pregnant, you're emotional, you misunderstand things." He approached her again, more slowly this time, crouching as she slid down to the floor. His hand reached for her face. She recoiled. His smile vanished. "Don't make this harder." Her breath shook. She wanted to scream, she wanted to run, but she had nowhere to go, not with her savings in his account, not with her credit card mysteriously misplaced, not with her friends gone and her family a ghost she no longer knew how to reach. Brandon's fingers gently brushed her cheek. "Let's forget tonight, okay? You're tired. I'm tired. We can start fresh tomorrow." He leaned in, whispering, "As long as you stay out of things that aren't meant for you." Then he stood, walked out, and closed the door. The click of the latch echoed through the room. Maddie curled on the floor, her breath shallow and uneven. She touched her cheek, feeling the bruise forming beneath the skin, the first she couldn't pretend away. Her baby moved again, a tiny flutter of life trying to remind her she wasn't alone. She pressed a trembling hand to her belly and whispered, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." But outside the apartment, someone had heard everything. Someone who recognized Brandon's voice. Someone who had been listening for months. Captain Ryan Brooks lowered his headphones, his expression frozen between horror and fury. And for the first time in years, he whispered his daughter's name. After the night Brandon struck her, Maddie did everything she could to erase the evidence. She dabbed concealer across her cheek until her skin stung. She held ice to her jaw until her fingers went numb. She rehearsed excuses, tripped over the rug, walked into a cabinet, pregnancy clumsiness. Lies came easier than truth. Truth demanded courage she no longer had. But her body wouldn't let her pretend. The following morning, a sharp pain twisted through her belly, sudden and deep. She doubled over near the kitchen counter, gripping the edge as panic rose in her throat. "Please, not again," she whispered. Her mind flashed back to the miscarriage she'd endured alone 2 years earlier, before the wedding. A memory she had buried under the belief that motherhood would eventually heal her. Brandon, already irritated about being late for work, turned at the sound of her whimper. "What now?" he snapped, setting his coffee mug down a little too hard. "I think something's wrong," Maddie gasped. "The baby." He rolled his eyes. "It's called discomfort, Maddie. Pregnant women get it." "No, this is different. I need a doctor." Brandon grabbed his keys. "Well, call an Uber. I can't miss this meeting." Her breath hitched. She stared at him, disbelief and fear colliding in her chest. She imagined the version of him she had once loved, the man who had walked with her along the East River, who kissed her knuckles like they were precious. That man was dust. This version was real. This version didn't care if she lived, died, or bled out on the kitchen tile. When the door slammed behind him, the apartment seemed to exhale cold, empty, uncaring. Hours later, at the prenatal clinic, a nurse pressed the Doppler against her stomach. The room fell silent until a faint, rhythmic heartbeat filled the air. Maddie broke down sobbing, relief flooding her body like warmth she hadn't felt in months. Her child was alive. Her child was fighting. But the doctor didn't smile. He folded his hands, his voice serious. Your stress levels are dangerously high. Any further trauma could trigger early labor or worse. He didn't say the word, but Maddie heard it anyway. Miscarriage. Are you safe at home? The doctor asked gently. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Safe. The word felt foreign, like a language she'd once spoken fluently but forgot. She lied. Yes. Because the truth required consequences she wasn't ready to face. Consequences Brandon might make her pay for. When she returned home, Brandon was already there, scrolling through his phone, irritated that dinner wasn't ready. He didn't ask about the appointment. He didn't look up when she sat down. He didn't notice that her hands wouldn't stop trembling. But late that night, something happened that changed everything. A letter slid under their apartment door. Maddie froze. She picked it up with trembling fingers. No return address, no stamp, just her name written in blocky handwriting she didn't recognize. Inside was a single line. He's going to take the baby from you. Prepare yourself. Her breath vanished. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought it might echo through the hallway. She turned, sensing movement. Brandon stood in the doorway, watching her read. His expression was unreadable. His smile was not. You really should be more careful about what you open, he said softly. And then he stepped forward, closing the distance with a purpose she had never seen before. Maddie's pulse hammered as Brandon approached her, the letter trembling in her grip. His expression calm, almost amused, made her skin crawl. He reached out, plucked the paper from her fingers, and read it with a faint smirk. People will say anything to scare a pregnant woman, he murmured. But the tone was wrong. Too smooth. Too unconcerned, too familiar with the threat. You know who sent this? Maddie whispered. Brandon folded the letter once, twice, then tore it cleanly down the middle. It's garbage, forget it. But she couldn't forget the way his jaw twitched, or how his eyes darted toward the hallway. Camera installed 2 months earlier, his decision, not hers. For safety, he'd said. Now she wondered whose safety he meant. That night, she lay awake beside him, one hand on her stomach, the other gripping the edge of the mattress. Every instinct in her body told her one thing. He is going to take the baby. He was preparing for it. The missing papers, the legal form she wasn't allowed to read, the tension he hid beneath clipped smiles. He wanted full control of her, of their child, of everything. And somewhere deep inside him, she sensed a line had already been crossed. While she stared at the ceiling, another pair of eyes watched her, but not from the shadows of the apartment. Across Manhattan, in a cramped surveillance room lit by blue monitors, Captain Ryan Brooks leaned forward, pausing the audio feed for the 10th time. He had heard the letter slide. He had heard Maddie gasp. He had heard Brandon's voice, cool and sharp as broken glass. And he recognized something in that tone. Because men like Brandon didn't hide long from men like Ryan. He had spent decades studying criminals, infiltrating networks of fraud and violence, learning the patterns of abusers who turned affection into weapons. And he had learned one painful truth. Violence never starts with fists. It starts with possession. Ryan's hands clenched. His daughter, his only child, was living in a war zone disguised as a marriage. Give me more intel on Hale, he ordered a fellow agent, his voice low and dangerous. We're getting there, the agent replied. But if we push too hard, he'll notice. He's already paranoid. He's also escalating, Ryan snapped. And she's pregnant. The agent hesitated. Sir, Maddie doesn't know you're watching. How long can you stay in the shadows? Ryan didn't answer. Because he knew the truth. Revealing himself too soon could compromise both the investigation and Maddie's safety. But staying hidden meant watching his daughter suffer without her knowing he had never abandoned her, not for a second. He stared at the screen showing Maddie asleep, curled protectively around her unborn child. A woman fighting alone, unaware that her father was fighting for her from the other side of the city. But the danger was growing faster than Ryan's intel. The next day, while Brandon was at work, Maddie found another envelope. This one slipped behind the fire extinguisher in the hallway. No handwriting, just a single printed sentence. Your husband already filed the paperwork. Her throat closed. Paperwork. The custody documents she wasn't allowed to see. The ones he told her were insurance. Her hands trembled violently. Someone inside the building was trying to warn her. Before she could retreat into the apartment, a door down the hall opened. Dr. Laurel Kim, her quiet neighbor, stepped out carrying a trash bag, but her eyes met Maddie's with a softness that felt intentional, almost knowing. "Laurel?" Maddie whispered. Laurel took a slow breath, as if weighing a risk. "You shouldn't be alone today." Maddie's heart pounded. "Why? What's happening?" Laurel glanced toward the hallway camera, then stepped closer and lowered her voice. "Because Brandon came to see me this morning." Maddie's blood turned cold. "Why would he?" Laurel swallowed hard. "He asked me how early a baby can be safely delivered without the mother." For a moment, Maddie forgot how to breathe. The hallway felt too narrow, the lights too bright, the air too thin. She stared at Dr. Laurel Kim, trying to understand the words she'd just spoken. "He asked you what?" Maddie whispered, one hand gripping the wall to stay steady. Laurel's eyes softened with something like pity. "He wanted to know how early a baby could be delivered without risking permanent complications. At least for the child. The child, not the mother." A chill swept through Maddie's bones. "I didn't tell him much," Laurel continued. "I just said it wasn't something to ask casually." But he wasn't casual. He was calculating. The hallway camera blinked red. Watching. Recording. Maddie felt suddenly exposed, as if Brandon's gaze lived inside the lens. "Why are you telling me this?" Maddie asked, her voice shaking. Laurel hesitated, glancing down the hall. "Because I've heard things. Through the walls, doors, arguments. I'm a doctor. I recognize fear when I see it." Her voice softened. "And you're afraid all the time." Maddie swallowed hard. Denying it felt pointless. "I don't know what to do." "You need help," Laurel whispered. "I can't call the police. He controls everything. The accounts, the apartment." He'd twist it. "I didn't say police," Laurel interrupted gently. "I said help." Before Maddie could respond, a door creaked on another floor, and Laurel stepped back quickly, pressing the trash bag to her chest. "Don't stay alone today. And whatever you do, don't tell him I spoke to you." Then she disappeared down the stairwell, leaving Maddie trembling in the hallway with 2 envelopes and a terror she could no longer rationalize. Back inside the apartment, she locked the door and slumped against it. Her baby shifted beneath her ribs, reminding her she didn't have the luxury of fear she needed: survival. And survival meant understanding what Brandon was planning. She moved quietly to his office, careful not to trigger the creaky floorboard near the bookshelf. She searched drawers, the safe he thought she didn't know the code to, folders he left half hidden. Nothing. No custody papers, no medical forms. Nothing concrete. But in the bottom drawer, taped to the underside, she found something worse. A business card. A name she didn't recognize. A clinic specializing in selective maternal separation for high-risk guardianship disputes. She nearly dropped it. He wasn't just thinking about taking the baby. He was planning it. Her vision swam. Her breath shortened. She pressed both palms to her belly, whispering, "I won't let him take you. I won't." A sudden beep cut the silence. The hallway camera. Activated. Someone was at the door. Her heart plummeted. She scrambled to close the drawer, shove the card into her pocket, and straighten the room. Footsteps approached outside, slow, heavy, unmistakable. "Brandon." Maddie rushed to the couch, pretending to read a magazine, though her hands shook so violently she could barely hold it. The door clicked open. Brandon stepped inside, his expression unreadable. He set his briefcase down, loosened his tie, and scanned the apartment as if searching for something out of place. Then his gaze landed on her. "You look pale," he said softly, too softly. "Rough day?" She forced a smile. "Just tired." He nodded, stepping closer. "You know, I don't like secrets, Maddie." Her blood ran cold. He reached into his pocket, pulled something out, dropped it onto the coffee table. Another envelope. Another message. And without breaking eye contact, he whispered, "You and I need to talk about trust." The envelope on the coffee table felt heavier than paper should ever feel. Maddie stared at it, her pulse thudding deep in her ears. Brandon leaned back on the couch across from her, arms stretched over the cushions, posture relaxed, too relaxed. It was the kind of calm that came from someone who believed he had already won. "Aren't you going to open it?" he asked, his voice smooth as glass. Her fingers felt numb. "What is it?" "Go on," he encouraged. "Trust me." Trust. That word meant danger. Still, Maddie picked up the envelope, the paper crinkling beneath her trembling grip. Inside was a single printed page. Petition for emergency guardianship transfer pending maternal psychological evaluation. Beneath it, bold text, filed by Brandon Hale. Her throat closed. "You filed this? Without telling me?" He sighed as if she were a child missing something obvious. "You've been unstable lately. Hormonal, emotional. You faint, you cry, you panic. I need to ensure the baby's safety." "No," she whispered. "You need control." His eyes flashed. "Careful, Maddie." She pressed a hand to her stomach, fighting nausea. "You can't take my baby." "I'm not taking anything." He smiled gently, a performance she had once believed. "I'm protecting our child from your family history." Her heart stopped. "My family history?" Brandon tapped the page. "Your father, for example." Her blood turned to ice. "You don't know anything about him." "Oh, I know enough." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Ryan Brooks disappeared from your life when you were a kid. Arrest records sealed, ties to federal investigations. Do you really think someone like that is a healthy influence on a newborn?" Her mouth fell open. "How do you even know who he is?" He smirked. "Because someone paid me to keep an eye on him, long before I ever met you." The room spun. Someone paid him to watch her father before he met her, which meant the meeting in the bookstore, the chance encounters, the timing. Nothing had been accidental. What are you saying?" Maddie whispered, horrified. Brandon didn't answer. Instead, he stood and walked to the kitchen, pouring himself a glass of water as if discussing weather. "Look, this doesn't have to be ugly. You cooperate, I'll let you stay involved. Supervised visits, scheduled bonding time. A fair arrangement." "You're insane," she choked out. He shrugged. "The court will believe me. I have documentation, witnesses. You've been fragile." "Who would testify to that?" she demanded. Another smirk. The hallway camera blinked. No, he wouldn't." Her voice cracked. "You've been recording me." "For months," he confirmed casually. "Doctors, neighbors, anyone who sees you already thinks you're overwhelmed." "I didn't even have to try hard." Her legs felt hollow. She stumbled backward, knocking into the edge of the dining table. Her baby kicked again, frantic, as if mirroring her panic. Brandon set his water down and approached her with slow, deliberate steps. "Don't fight me on this, Maddie. You won't win. People like you don't win." Something shattered inside her. Fear turned into something sharp. "I'm not letting you take my child," she whispered fiercely. He tilted his head. "And how exactly will you stop me?" Before she could respond, a loud crash echoed through the hallway, metal hitting metal. Brandon stiffened. Maddie turned toward the door. Another crash. Then a voice. Familiar. Urgent. "Maddie, it's Laurel. Open up." Brandon's expression twisted with rage. "Don't you touch that door." But Maddie, trembling, took a step toward it. And as Brandon lunged forward, Laurel's muffled voice trembled with terror. "Maddie, run. He's not working alone." Maddie froze halfway between the couch and the door. Brandon's footsteps thudded behind her, heavy and furious, but Laurel's trembling voice on the other side sliced through her panic like lightning. "Maddie, run. He's not working alone." For a split second, the world stopped. The walls tightened around her, the hallway outside buzzing with danger she couldn't see yet. Brandon lunged, grabbing her wrist before she could reach the door. "What did she tell you?" he snarled, spit hitting her cheek. His fingers dug deep into her skin, leaving marks she knew would darken by morning. "Let go," she gasped, twisting, but he was stronger he always had been. Strong enough to shove her into a wall. Strong enough to tear her life apart. Strong enough to end everything. Laurel pounded again. "Maddie, there are men in the stairwell, 2 of them. They were asking for your apartment number." Maddie's breath vanished. Who? Why? But the answer came in the silence that followed. Brandon's silence. His grip loosened not out of mercy, but calculation. She saw it in his eyes, the flicker of a plan unfolding, one she wasn't meant to survive. You weren't supposed to know that, he muttered. Her blood ran cold. Brandon, what did you do? He didn't answer. Instead, he dragged her away from the door and shoved her toward the kitchen. She stumbled, catching herself on the island before her stomach collided with the sharp edge. I didn't want it to go this way, Brandon said, pacing. I really didn't, but your father forced my hand. Her heart lurched. My father? Brandon's eyes narrowed. Don't act surprised. You think I married you for love? He laughed, bitter and cruel. I needed leverage, and you were the perfect weak link. Her pulse roared. Leverage for what? To access him, Brandon hissed. To track him, to corner him. The people I work with, they wanted him long before I wanted you. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a chilling whisper. You were never more than bait. A wave of nausea crashed over her. Not just fear, betrayal so deep it scraped bone. Every sleepless night, every cruel word, every bruise, it had all been part of something bigger, something she never saw. Laurel's voice cracked through the door again. Maddie, please, they're coming up the stairwell. This time, Maddie heard footsteps, multiple sets, fast and purposeful. Brandon's jaw clenched. They're early, he muttered. Damn it. He grabbed Maddie's arm again, dragging her toward the bedroom. She clawed at the doorframe. Brandon, stop. Tell me what's going on. But he didn't stop. He didn't even slow down. You're coming with me, he said coldly. They'll take the baby, and you'll disappear. No one will ever trace it back to me. Her scream echoed through the apartment, but no sound stopped him. Then, a boom. The front door shuddered violently. Laurel screamed, Maddie, move. They're trying to break it down. Brandon froze. His eyes darted between the door and Maddie, calculating, hunting, choosing. The second boom cracked the frame. Dust rained from the hinges. Someone, or several someones, were ramming it with brutal force. Maddie saw her chance. She tore away from Brandon, sprinting toward the kitchen, her breath ragged, her heart splitting her ribs. Behind her, Brandon cursed and gave chase. The door burst inward. Men in dark coats flooded the living room. Brandon grabbed a knife from the counter, and the world spun into chaos as one of the intruders shouted, Grab the wife now. The kitchen erupted into chaos the moment those men burst through the door. The sound of splintering wood ricocheted through Maddie's skull like gunfire. She stumbled backward, one hand guarding her stomach, the other grasping the counter for balance. The first man, broad shoulders, leather gloves, face half hidden beneath a hood, lunged toward her. But Brandon moved faster. He stepped between them, not to protect her, but to claim her. She's coming with me, he barked, gripping her arm hard enough to bruise. We had a deal. A deal. Her breath caught. He knew them. The intruder shoved him back. Plans changed. Your boss wants her now. Not without the baby, Brandon snapped, lifting the knife. The man's expression twisted. The wife is the package. Maddie felt her knees weaken. Package. Not person. Not mother. Not human. Just a bargaining chip in whatever nightmare Brandon had entangled himself in. She twisted, desperate, pushing herself toward the far wall. A second intruder blocked the path, grabbing her wrist. Pain shot up her arm. Let me go, she screamed, her voice cracking. The man laughed. Relax, sweetheart. We're under strict orders not to damage the merchandise. Merchandise. Her heart plummeted. Brandon lunged with the knife, slicing the man's forearm. Blood sprayed, and the intruder recoiled with a roar. The distraction gave Maddie the precious seconds she needed to tear free and bolt toward the bedroom. If she could lock the door, if she could hide, she didn't finish the thought. A third man appeared in the hallway. Tall, dark jacket, a pistol holstered at his hip. She froze, every instinct screaming, don't move. But he didn't reach for the gun. He reached for his badge. Federal agent down, he yelled. Everything stopped. Time, movement, breath. The two intruders spun toward him, shock overtaking their hostility. Brandon cursed violently. You weren't supposed to be here yet. The agent ignored him and stepped toward Maddie. Ma'am, I need you to get behind me. Now. But before she could react, a fourth figure stepped through the doorway, someone who didn't belong to either side. someone whose presence ripped the air out of Maddie's lungs. Captain Ryan Brooks. Her father, older now. Gray threaded through his hair. Eyes hard but filled with something she couldn't process in the chaos. Recognition. Fear. Love. Regret. "Maddie," he breathed, the word breaking inside him. Her world tilted. "Dad?" The whisper escaped her without permission. One of the intruders snarled, "Brooks, he's here. We need her alive." Ryan surged forward, gun drawn, voice thunderous. "Nobody touches my daughter." A shot exploded. Glass shattered. Maddie dropped to the floor, covering her belly. The room filled with shouting, bodies colliding, boots scraping tile. The agent tackled one intruder. Ryan disarmed another with brutal efficiency, and Brandon disappeared into the smoke of chaos, fleeing toward the back exit. Then a hand grabbed Maddie's ankle. Not rough, not violent. Laurel. "Maddie, get up," she cried, pulling her toward the hallway. "They'll take you if you stay here." "My father," Maddie gasped. "He's buying you time." A deafening blast shook the apartment again. Dust rained from the vents. Someone screamed. Someone fell. Laurel dragged her into the stairwell, just as another intruder crashed through the bedroom door, searching for her. Maddie stumbled down the stairs, heart pounding, breath ragged. Behind her, the apartment erupted into another violent struggle, fists, shots, breaking furniture. Laurel shoved open the exit door into the alley. But the moment they stepped into the cold air, a black SUV screeched to a stop in front of them. The back door flew open. Brandon sat inside, his knife gone, his smile back. "Get in the car, Maddie, now." Cold air sliced across Maddie's face as the SUV's door swung open, its interior lights spilling into the dark alley. Brandon sat inside, hair disheveled, eyes burning with manic determination. He patted the seat beside him like he was inviting a child into a toy store instead of dragging his pregnant wife into a kidnapping. "Maddie," he said quietly, too quietly, "get in, now." Laurel stepped between them, arms spread. "She's not going anywhere with you." Brandon's smile twitched. "Laurel, you're a doctor, not a hero. Move." "No." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Brandon leaned forward, his voice smooth as a blade. "If she doesn't get in voluntarily, they'll take her forcefully. They only want the baby. You really want to watch that happen?" Laurel's breath caught, but she didn't step aside. Maddie, shaking, pulled Laurel's sleeve. Don't get hurt because of me." Brandon seized the opening. He lunged, grabbed Maddie's arm, and yanked her toward the SUV with terrifying strength. She cried out, stumbling. Laurel grabbed Maddie's waist, pulling back with everything she had. For a moment, Maddie was suspended between them, one man dragging her toward terror, one woman fighting to free her. Brandon snarled and shoved Laurel against the brick wall. She hit hard, sliding to the ground, dazed. "Laurel," Maddie cried. That second of distraction was all Brandon needed. He shoved her into the back seat. The door slammed shut. Locks clicked. The SUV lunged forward. Maddie's breath shattered. She slammed her fists against the tinted window. "Let me out." Brandon, stop. Brandon didn't look back. "You'll thank me one day." "For taking my baby?" she screamed. "For saving your child from your father," he snapped. "Ryan Brooks is dangerous. You don't know what he's capable of." Images flashed through her mind, her father bursting into the apartment, shouting her name, risking his life for her. Dangerous? Maybe. But not to her. "You're lying," she whispered. Brandon's grip tightened on the wheel. "Your father is not who you think." Her voice shook. "And you are?" He laughed, a hollow, chilling sound. "I never pretended to be good. That's your problem. You see what you want, not what's real." Streetlights streaked across her vision as they sped through Queens. Maddie tried the door again. Locked. She tried the window. Dead. Panic surged like electricity through her limbs. "I won't let you take my baby," she whispered fiercely. Brandon's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. Something cold, inhuman, burned there. "You won't have a choice." But he miscalculated one thing. Maddie had nothing left to lose. She spotted his phone in the console beside him, unlocked, a call still open, a call that had been live the entire escape. And on the screen, tiny and glowing, "Ryan Brooks, active call, 12:43. Her heart stuttered. Her father heard everything. Every threat, every word, every mile they drove. Brandon saw her realization too late. "Don't." Maddie grabbed the phone, pressed it to her lips and screamed with everything inside her. "Dad, help me, I'm in the SUV, he's taking me." Brandon swerved violently, trying to rip the phone from her hands. The SUV fishtailed, tires shrieking on the wet pavement. Maddie slammed against the door, pain exploding down her side. The phone flew from her grip. The SUV spun. Brandon cursed, jerking the wheel. Too late. A truck horn roared. Headlights swallowed them, and the world exploded in crushing, blinding impact. Metal screamed. Glass exploded. The world flipped sideways. The SUV spun twice before slamming into a guardrail, the impact tearing through Maddie's lungs like fire. Pain shot up her ribs, her stomach, her skull. She heard herself gasp, and then she heard nothing at all. Just a ringing, high and sharp, drowning out everything else. Her vision flickered. Streetlights smeared across the windshield like streaks of dying stars. Blood-warm, metallic dripped down her forehead. She tried to move. She couldn't. Her baby. Her hand crawled instinctively toward her stomach, trembling violently. "Please," she whispered. "Please, hold on." A groan came from the front seat. Brandon. Alive. He shoved the airbag away, coughing, cursing. "Damn it, Maddie, this is your fault." Her fault? Her fault that he kidnapped her? Her fault that he drove like a madman? The ringing in her ears faded just enough for her to hear his breathing, ragged, furious. She felt him twisting in his seat, unbuckling himself. "We have to move," he muttered. "They'll be here any second." "They?" she whispered weakly. But the answer came before he could speak. Sirens. Distant but closing fast. Brandon slammed his fist against the dashboard. "Your father ruins everything." Her father? Was he close? Did he know where the crash happened? Just as Brandon reached toward her, ready to drag her from the wreckage, shadows moved outside the shattered window. Boots pounded. Flashlights cut through the dark. Federal agents. Hands where we can see them. Brandon froze only for a heartbeat, then lunged for Maddie, using her body as leverage to pull himself up. The door behind him was yanked open. Someone grabbed the back of his collar, ripping him away from her like tearing a weed from the ground. Brandon's scream tangled with the sound of fists connecting thud, thud, thud. Maddie blinked through the haze. Vision, swimming. A man leaned into the SUV, breath heavy, voice cracking in a way she had never heard. "Maddie, Maddie, look at me." Through the blur, she saw him. Gray hair, weathered face, eyes burning with terror and love. "Dad," she whispered, lips barely moving. Ryan Brooks swallowed hard, pushing broken glass aside to reach her. "I've got you, sweetheart. Stay awake. Don't you close your eyes." She cried out as he lifted her head gently, checking her pupils, her breathing. The fear in his face made her chest tighten. He wasn't Captain Brooks right now. He wasn't an agent. He was a father who had already lost her once and refused to lose her again. "My baby," she whispered, clutching her stomach. "Dad, is the baby?" He pressed his hand over hers. "We're going to get you both help. Immediately. Don't panic, just stay with me." His voice cracked. "I'm here now. I should have been here sooner. I'm sorry, Maddie. I'm so damn sorry." Her tears mixed with blood. Behind them, agents pinned Brandon to the pavement. He thrashed wildly, screaming threats. "You think this changes anything? She's mine. You hear me, Ryan? You can't protect her forever." Ryan's jaw clenched. He didn't even look back. His entire focus stayed on Maddie. He lifted her from the wreckage, wrapping his coat around her trembling shoulders. She sagged into his arms as sirens roared closer. Ambulances, cruisers, more agents. "Dad," she whispered, voice fading. "Don't let him. Take." Her knees buckled. "I won't," Ryan said fiercely, holding her tighter. "I swear on my life, I won't." But just as he began carrying her toward the ambulance, a sharp crack echoed across the crash site. A gunshot. Maddie gasped. Ryan jerked. Agents shouted. From the ground, one of the intruders, bleeding, half-conscious, held up a pistol, smoke still drifting from the barrel. And Brandon, smirking through bruised lips, whispered, "Told you, we're not done yet." Ryan staggered as the bullet tore past him, grazing his upper arm. Pain flared hot and sudden, but he didn't drop Maddie, not for a second. He pivoted, shielding her with his entire body, while agents swarmed the shooter, tackling the bleeding intruder into the pavement. The gun skidded across the asphalt, clattering against the guardrail. "Officer down," someone shouted. "I'm fine," Ryan barked, clutching Maddie tighter. "Get me a medic for her, now." Maddie whimpered, barely conscious. Her head lolled against his chest as he carried her toward the flashing ambulance lights. Every step jostled her belly, and each jolt felt like a spark of fear trying to ignite inside her. "Dad," she whispered weakly. "Don't leave." "I'm not going anywhere," Ryan murmured, brushing blood-matted hair from her face. His voice trembled despite every attempt to steady it. "You're safe now. I've got you." But she knew he wasn't safe. Neither of them were. Red and blue lights strobed across her fading vision as paramedics rushed toward them. One of them, a woman with steady hands and a calm voice, guided Ryan onto a stretcher with Maddie still in his arms. "We'll take her," the medic said. "You get her baby first," he snapped. "Check the baby, now." The medic nodded, understanding the terror beneath his command. A Doppler monitor hummed to life. Seconds crawled. Maddie held her breath. Ryan held her tighter. Then, a faint, rapid heartbeat filled the air. Alive. Fighting. Still here. Maddie broke into sobs of pure relief. Ryan exhaled a shaky breath, his head dropping toward hers. "You hear that?" he whispered. "Your baby's strong like you." Her fingers curled into his coat. "Don't let him touch us again." "I won't," Ryan vowed. "Not him, not any of them." But outside the ambulance, chaos still churned. Agents pinned Brandon chest down on the asphalt, hands zip-tied behind his back. His mouth dripped blood, one eye swollen shut, but he still twisted violently, screaming Maddie's name like a threat carved into air. "She's mine," Brandon howled. "You don't get it. She belongs to me. The deal is still on, Brooks. You can't stop it." Ryan clenched his teeth. "Cover her ears," he ordered the medic. The medic complied, but the damage had already been done. Maddie heard every word, every delusional claim, every reminder that Brandon's obsession wasn't gone, it was growing into something monstrous. Laurel appeared breathless beside the ambulance, her coat torn, hair disheveled from the struggle. "Is she okay? Ryan, tell me she's okay." "She's stable," the medic said, "but we need to transport her now." Laurel's eyes softened with relief until she looked past Ryan and saw something the others missed. She froze. "Ryan," she whispered. "Where are the other two men?" Ryan stiffened. "What do you mean?" "We subdued one." "The other?" "No." Laurel's face drained of color. There were 3 men in the stairwell. Ryan's blood ran cold. He turned sharply, scanning the scene: agents, cruisers, shattered glass, the crumpled SUV. But Laurel was right. One man, unaccounted for. One man who wasn't in cuffs. One man whose orders had been clear. Bring the wife alive. Ryan's instincts roared to life. He slammed a hand against the ambulance door. "Lock down this perimeter, now. There's another hostile in the area, armed." But the medic was already lifting Maddie onto the gurney. As they rolled her inside, she clutched her father's hand. "Don't leave me," she whispered. "Please stay." "I will," Ryan promised, climbing into the ambulance beside her. Yet, even as the doors slammed shut, a shadow slipped behind a row of patrol cars. A man watching, waiting, tracking the ambulance with predator stillness. And then he spoke into his radio. "Target secured. Follow the ambulance. Do not lose her." The ambulance tore through Manhattan traffic, sirens splitting the cold night. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above Maddie, bathing her pale skin in an eerie glow. She clutched her father's hand like an anchor, her breath shallow and uneven. "Stay with me," Ryan urged, his injured arm bleeding through the bandage. "You're safe now, sweetheart. We're going straight to New York Presbyterian. Full security. You'll be protected." But Maddie saw fear in his eyes. Deep, buried, but trembling. He wasn't just scared for her. He was scared of whoever was still coming. The medic adjusted the oxygen mask over Maddie's face. Blood pressure dropping. "She's losing too much blood from the crash. We need to get her to surgery as soon as we arrive." Ryan nodded tightly. "Do whatever you need." The ambulance jolted over a pothole, making Maddie gasp and curl instinctively around her belly. A rhythmic monitor beeped erratically. "Baby," Maddie whispered. "Dad, save the baby." "You both make it," he said fiercely. "That's not optional." But outside the ambulance, through the narrow back window, headlights appeared, 2 vehicles trailing them. Not close enough to be conspicuous, but not far enough to be coincidence. Inside, one of them sat the missing intruder. The man from the stairwell, the one whose face Maddie hadn't seen. His voice crackled over a radio. They're heading to the hospital, no interference yet, awaiting instructions. Instructions he clearly expected to arrive. Ryan noticed the headlights too. His jaw set. "Driver," he called, "we're being tailed." "We've got units nearby," the driver replied. "They'll intercept if needed." But Ryan looked back again. The distance wasn't changing. They were waiting. Patient, predatory. The ambulance swerved into the hospital bay. Security officers rushed forward, clearing the path, guiding the gurney toward the entrance. Snowflakes drifted down in slow motion, catching in Maddie's hair as Ryan ran beside her. Inside the automatic doors, warm, sterile air enveloped them. And that was when everything happened at once. Doctors swarmed Maddie, wheeling her toward triage. "We need ultrasound and trauma assessment now." Ryan tried to follow, but a nurse stepped in front of him. "Sir, you need treatment, your arm." "I'm not leaving my daughter." Before the nurse could respond, a tall doctor approached, late 40s, sharp eyes, steady hands. "Captain Brooks?" the doctor asked calmly. Ryan stiffened. "Do I know you?" "I'm Dr. Ethan Moran," he said. "Chief of obstetrics tonight. I was told to expect you." Ryan frowned. "By who?" The doctor didn't blink. "Your agency." Something in Ryan's gut twisted. Which agency? But before Dr. Moran could answer, 2 hospital security guards sprinted past them toward the entrance. Lockdown protocol. Unauthorized personnel breaching the south corridor. Ryan's blood went ice cold. Not here. Not now. Not in a hospital. He tried to push past Dr. Moran, but the doctor grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "Captain, listen. You need to trust me. Your daughter is being moved to a secure OR. No one unauthorized will get near her." Ryan glared. "Why should I trust you?" "Because," the doctor said quietly, "I know exactly who's coming for her." Ryan's breath stopped. "Then tell me who they are." The doctor hesitated for the briefest second. "The people your daughter's husband worked for aren't done. They want leverage. And Maddie is leverage." Ryan's rage surged. "Over my dead body." Dr. Moran's eyes darkened. "That's the fear." Suddenly, overhead speakers blared. "Code black, all units to the maternity wing." "Repeat." "Code black." Ryan's heart stopped. The maternity wing, where they had just taken Maddie. He spun toward the hallway, but Dr. Moran stepped in front of him, expression suddenly unreadable. And in a calm, chilling whisper, he said, "Captain, where do you think I'm taking her?" The ambulance doors swung open with a burst of cold air as paramedics rushed Maddie into the emergency bay at New York Presbyterian. Ryan jumped out right behind them, ignoring the pain burning down his arm. He couldn't feel anything except the terror of almost losing her. Not again. Not tonight. "Trauma team, pregnant patient, restrained breathing, possible internal bleeding," a medic shouted. Doctors gathered instantly, surrounding Maddie like a shield of white coats. Ryan followed until a nurse blocked him with outstretched arms. "Sir, please, you need to let us work." "That's my daughter," he rasped, voice shaking. "I'm staying." The nurse softened, but her stance didn't change. "Just give us 5 minutes. Let us stabilize her." Reluctantly, Ryan stepped back, fists clenching at his sides. Through the glass partition, he saw them place oxygen over Maddie's face, hook her to monitors, press hands against her abdomen, murmur medical terms he couldn't hear. He swallowed hard. He'd faced cartel leaders without blinking. He'd walked into fire with no hesitation. But watching Maddie lie there, bleeding and barely conscious, it was the first time in decades he felt powerless. A security guard approached. "Captain Brooks, we've sealed the entrances. No one comes in or out without clearance." Ryan nodded. "And the third suspect? The one unaccounted for? Still missing." Ryan's pulse darkened. Of course he was. These men were ghosts, trained, organized, loyal to someone Ryan hadn't identified yet. But he knew one thing. They weren't done. Inside the trauma bay, Maddie suddenly jolted, gasping. A doctor held her shoulders as she cried out, "My baby, please don't take my baby." Ryan's breath caught. He pressed his palm to the glass, helplessly watching her panic. One of the doctors leaned close to her. "The baby is alive. Do you hear me? Alive. We just need to keep you calm. Alive." Ryan exhaled a shaky breath, closing his eyes in relief. But the relief didn't last. The sliding doors at the end of the hallway opened, and a doctor strode in gray coat, confident steps, name badge glinting under the fluorescent lights. Dr. Adrian Locke, head of obstetric trauma. Ryan recognized him. Not personally, professionally. Locke had treated high-profile criminals in the past. Locke had taken payments under the table. Locke had once vanished from an FBI watch list under mysterious circumstances. "Why is he here?" Ryan demanded. The nurse blinked. "He's head of the department." "No," Ryan growled, stepping forward. "He's not touching my daughter." But before he could reach the bay, Locke stopped him with a raised hand. "Captain Brooks," Locke said smoothly, "you need to focus on your arm. You're bleeding heavily. My daughter comes first." Locke smiled faintly. Something cold flickered in his eyes. "Oh, I agree, which is exactly why I'll be overseeing her care tonight." Ryan stiffened. "Over my dead body." Locke stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You've made dangerous enemies, Captain. Some of them believe the fastest way to control a man is through his child." Ryan's heart slammed against his ribs. "If you touch her—" "I'm a doctor," Locke said mildly. "I touch patients. That's my job." A coded answer, a threat in plain sight. Before Ryan could react, alarms blared inside the trauma bay. Maddie convulsed monitors, spiking. Doctors shouted, "She's going into preterm distress. Move her to OR3, now." Ryan lunged toward the door, panic tearing through him. But Locke stepped in front of him again, blocking the entrance with clinical calm. And with a slow, chilling smile, he whispered, "Captain, did you really think the hospital was safer than the outside?" The moment Dr. Adrian Locke blocked the trauma bay door, every instinct in Ryan's body screamed danger. Not the vague kind, the kind with teeth, the kind he'd spent decades tracking. He stepped closer, his voice low. "Move." Locke didn't flinch. "If you enter that room, you'll compromise the team. Your daughter needs stability, not chaos." "You think you're stability?" Ryan growled. Before Locke could respond, two nurses pushed Maddie's gurney toward the surgical hallway. Her head lolled to the side, oxygen mask fogging with her shallow breaths. Her fingers twitched weakly, reaching for someone she couldn't see. It shattered Ryan. He pushed past Locke, but two hospital security officers suddenly appeared, blocking him. Their badges looked real, their uniforms looked real, but their stance, too rigid, too silent, felt wrong. "Captain Brooks," one said, "you need to step back." Ryan's eyes narrowed. "Who authorized you?" "Dr. Locke," the guard replied smoothly. Ryan's fury surged. "He doesn't outrank federal authority. Step aside." Neither guard moved an inch. Behind them, Locke smiled. "Captain, please. You're bleeding. You're unstable. You're becoming a liability to your own daughter." Something clicked. This wasn't medical protocol. This was containment. Ryan forced his tone to steady. "Where are you taking her?" "To OR3, Locke said. "For an emergency C-section. Her vitals are deteriorating." Ryan's blood ran cold. "She's only 7 months." "Yes," Locke said casually, "but viability is strong these days. Like hell you're delivering that baby early." Locke exhaled as if bored. "Captain, you don't have the full picture. There are stakeholders deeply interested in the Brooks lineage." Stakeholders. The word tasted like poison. Ryan stepped forward, ready to fight his way through. But Locke lifted a small tablet, tapping the screen. Live security footage appeared. Brandon Hale, in a police cruiser, grinning directly at the camera. "Did you really think your daughter married him by accident?" Locke whispered. Ryan's chest tightened. "If you touch her—" "I'm a doctor," Locke repeated. "I touch patients, especially valuable ones." A nurse approached silently. "Dr. Locke, OR3 is sterile. They're ready for incision." Ryan exploded. "No, she is not going into surgery. That child stays where it is." But the guards shoved him back, pinning him against the wall. Pain seared his injured arm, yet he didn't stop struggling. Locke leaned in, voice icy. "Your daughter's womb holds more value than you understand. You spent years hunting us, Captain Brooks. You should have known we would hunt back." Ryan's breath froze. This wasn't about Maddie. This wasn't about Brandon. This was about him. Locke stepped away, following Maddie's gurney toward the surgical wing. "You've been a ghost to us for nearly 2 decades, but ghosts always leave one weakness behind." He nodded toward Maddie. She was yours. Ryan roared, thrashing against the guards. Let me go. They forced him harder into the wall. Inside the surgical hallway, Maddie's gurney rolled farther and farther away, monitors beeping, wheels squeaking against the tile. Her eyes fluttered open for a moment. She didn't see Locke. She didn't see the guards. She didn't see the danger closing in. She saw only her father. Dad, she whispered, barely audible. Help. Her voice cracked, and then she was swallowed by the double doors of the surgical wing. Ryan's vision burned, his pulse slamming with helpless fury. Those doors locked. Click. And Locke's voice echoed faintly. Prep for extraction. Ryan felt the world collapse. He inhaled once, twice. Then he whispered, deadly calm, if they cut into her, I'll burn this hospital to the ground. The double doors to the surgical wing slammed shut, sealing Maddie behind glass, steel, and a network of hallways designed to keep the outside world out. Ryan stared at those doors as if he could will them open with sheer force. Blood dripped steadily down his arm, staining the floor, but he didn't feel it, not compared to the pain roaring in his chest. He tried the handle. Locked. He tried again. Still locked. One of the guards tried to pull him back. Sir, you need medical attention. Ryan snapped the man's wrist in one fluid motion. The guard howled. The other lunged, but Ryan flipped him against the wall, pinning him with the weight of 20 years of trained violence. Open that door, he growled. We don't have access. Wrong answer. Ryan drove his elbow into the man's ribs, dropping him to the ground. Then the overhead intercom chimed. Surgical team for patient Brooks. Report to OR3. Prep complete. OR3. The very room Locke claimed to be preparing. Ryan's breath turned razor sharp. They weren't trying to save Maddie, they were isolating her. Operating rooms were perfect for medical sabotage. Controlled environment, minimal witnesses, restricted access. And Locke had engineered the entire scenario. Ryan grabbed the fallen guard's radio, switching to hospital command frequency. Security, this is Captain Ryan Brooks, Federal Badge 4721. Seal all exits from the surgical wing now. No one in, no one out, not even staff. Static. Then a voice, Captain, we already attempted lockdown. Someone inside bypassed it. Locke. Of course he did. Ryan's mind sharpened. He couldn't go through the doors, so he'd go around them. He sprinted down the hall, following the blueprint he'd memorized years ago during an investigation here. Surgical wings, shared ventilation shafts, maintenance rooms, backup generators, old structures, hospitals never tore down because it was cheaper to ignore them. He reached the maintenance stairwell, kicking it open. Dust fell from the ceiling, pipes rattled overhead. Perfect. He climbed 2 flights, ignoring the stabbing pain in his arm, until he reached a service corridor parallel to the OR hallway. The walls buzzed with machinery. A narrow window revealed a sliver of OR3's preparation area. He saw Maddie, lying on the table, eyes half open, tears streaking down her temples. And next to her, Locke, adjusting gloves with frightening calm. A scalpel tray gleamed beside him. 2 assistants, strangers, not hospital staff, stood by. One held restraints. The other checked a syringe filled with a milky sedative. A sedation dose meant for someone not expected to wake again. Ryan's fist slammed into the glass. No. A nurse in the hallway outside, OR3 turned, her brow furrowed. She mouthed, Who are you? He pointed at Locke, shaking his head violently. Not safe. Not real. Help her. The nurse hesitated. Confusion flickered. She stepped toward the OR doors. Before she reached them, one of Locke's imposter assistants stepped out, smiling too politely. We don't need additional staff. Thank you. Something about his tone made the nurse freeze. Locke lifted the syringe. Maddie blinked up at him, whispering, Please, don't, please. Locke smiled. Shh, it's better this way. Ryan's vision went red. He punched the narrow viewing pane until it cracked once, twice, again. The glass spiderwebbed under his fist. Blood coated his knuckles. Still, he punched. Then, footsteps echoed behind him. Fast. Sharp. Purposeful. Ryan spun. A figure stepped from the shadows of the service corridor. Dark coat, black gloves. A silenced pistol aimed at Ryan's heart. Not Locke. Not Brandon. The missing third man. He tilted his head and spoke with chilling calm. Captain Brooks, step away from the window. We need her unconscious before we extract the child. The man's silenced pistol didn't shake. His stance was trained, steady, practiced. This wasn't a hired thug. This was someone who had done wet work before. Someone who wouldn't hesitate to put a bullet through Ryan's ribs. Ryan lifted both hands slowly, blood dripping from his knuckles. You shoot me, and the entire hospital is on lockdown within 60 seconds. The man smirked slightly. It already is, and we're the ones who locked it down. A chill swept through Ryan's spine. Not good. Not good at all. Step away from the window, the man repeated. Through the cracked pane, Maddie's voice reached him again, faint, frightened. Dad, please. The sound tore something inside him, but he forced himself to stay still. If he lunged now, he'd die before taking 2 steps. And Maddie would be left with Locke and that syringe. Ryan kept his tone level. Why the girl? Why my daughter? You want me fine? I'll go with you. The man tilted his head. You don't understand your value, Captain Brooks. We don't need you. His stomach dropped. Then what? We need the child. The words slammed into him like another bullet. You're insane, Ryan growled. The man's eyes gleamed. Your daughter is carrying something generations have waited for. Ryan stepped forward despite the gun. A baby. She's carrying a baby, nothing more. You're wrong, the man whispered. She's carrying leverage. Inside OR3, Locke leaned over Maddie, the syringe in his hand inching closer to her arm. Maddie struggled weakly, tears streaking down her temples. Please. I don't want, please, don't take my baby. Locke's smile didn't waver. Hush now, this won't take long. Ryan's pulse thundered. Maddie was seconds from being sedated, seconds from disappearing into whatever nightmare Locke had planned. If the sedative hit her bloodstream, he might never get her back. He needed a distraction. A weapon. A miracle. Instead, he got an opportunity. Down the hall, behind the gunman, a maintenance cart swung around the corner, pushed by a timid janitor who froze the second he saw the pistol. The gunman turned his head 1 inch. 1 inch was enough. Ryan lunged. The silenced shot fired. Searing pain tore across Ryan's ribs. But he didn't stop. He slammed into the gunman, driving him into the concrete wall. The pistol skittered across the floor, disappearing under the machinery. The man snarled, locking his forearm around Ryan's throat, squeezing hard. Ryan dug his fingers into the man's wrist, fighting for air. Black dots speckled his vision. His injured arm screamed with every movement. But he twisted, slammed an elbow into the man's sternum, then hooked his leg behind him, flipping them both onto the ground. The man recovered quickly, too quickly. He grabbed a shard of metal from the maintenance cart and slashed. Ryan ducked the blade, grazed his shoulder. He retaliated, slamming his fist into the man's jaw. The crack echoed. The man reeled, stunned long enough for Ryan to grab the shard, pin him to the ground, and press it to his throat. You touch my daughter, Ryan rasped, breath shaking, and I will end you where you lie. The man didn't fear death. His smile proved it. You can't stop what's coming, he whispered. Locke is beginning the sedation. Your daughter will be unconscious in 30 seconds. Ryan whipped his head toward the window. Locke lifted the syringe. Maddie's eyelids fluttered. Her lips parted. Dad, then her body went still. No, Ryan breathed. No. He turned back toward the hallway, sprinting like a man with nothing left to lose. But as he charged toward the surgical doors, a chilling voice echoed through the intercom. All units secure the father. The extraction must proceed. The intercom's command echoed viciously down the sterile hallway. All units secure the father. The extraction must proceed. Extraction. Proceed. Ryan Brooks had heard those terms too many times in black site briefings. They were never used for patients, only for targets. And tonight, his daughter, his pregnant, barely conscious daughter, was a target. Not anymore. He sprinted toward the surgical doors, every muscle screaming from the gunshot graze, every heartbeat pounding with a fury he didn't know he was still capable of. He slammed his shoulder into the locked doors. They didn't budge. He hit them again. Metal groaned but held. Behind him, footsteps thundered. 2 security officers, a hospital supervisor, and a man with a tactical vest who definitely wasn't hospital staff. They advanced quickly, forming a line meant to block, contain, and neutralize him. Captain Brooks, the supervisor barked. "Step away from the surgical wing." Ryan ignored him and hit the door again. "Open it." "Captain," the tactical officer yelled, "this is your final warning." "Go to hell," Ryan roared. Then the man raised a stun gun. Ryan ducked. The stun charge hit the metal frame, sparking dangerously. "I said stand down," the officer shouted. But Ryan was done listening. He grabbed the metal shard he'd taken from the attacker and hurled it with precision born of decades in federal operations. It struck the stun gun, knocking it from the man's grip and sending it skidding down the hallway. The officers hesitated just long enough. Ryan dashed to a maintenance panel beside the surgical doors. He ripped it open, sparks showering down his forearms. Inside was a mess of wires, conduits, emergency override lines. Red meant lockdown. Blue meant override. Yellow meant alarm. He didn't need instructions. He ripped out the red. The alarm blared instantly. Unauthorized access to surgical wing. Good. Let the whole building wake up. Behind him, the tactical officer lunged, but Ryan swung the panel door, slamming it into the man's face. The officer collapsed, dazed. The surgical doors beeped. The lock disengaged. Ryan didn't wait for them to fully open. He forced his way through the gap, tearing his shoulder on the frame, but adrenaline pushed him forward. Inside, the fluorescent lights flickered over stainless steel. OR 3 was straight ahead. He ran. Inside the observation window of OR 3, chaos unfolded. Locke hovered over Maddie's motionless body. Her eyes were barely open, her breathing thin but present. Monitors beeped irregularly. One assistant held her wrist, already cleaning a spot for the syringe. Another adjusted restraints. Locke lifted the sedative again. "Begin the extraction." Ryan slammed into the door, but this one required a code. He cursed violently, pounding on the glass. "Locke," he roared, "step away from her." Locke didn't even look up. Cold, detached, professional. "Inject," he said. "No, no." Ryan slammed the glass again, leaving bloody streaks. Inside, the assistant pressed the syringe to Maddie's skin, and the entire wall panel beside the OR door suddenly blew open. A fire extinguisher smashed through the panel, thrown from the hallway with terrifying force. Wires exploded, alarms shrieking. Locke recoiled. The assistant stumbled, dropping the syringe. And from behind the shattered panel, a figure climbed out, coughing through dust and sparks. Laurel Kim, hair wild, scrubs torn, eyes blazing. "I warned you," she hissed at Locke. "You're not touching her." Ryan's heart nearly stopped. "Laurel, get Maddie out of there." "I'm trying," she shouted back. Locke reached for a scalpel. Laurel grabbed a tray and hurled it at him. The OR erupted into chaos. Locke lunged. Laurel dodged, grabbing Maddie's gurney. She slammed her hand on the emergency brake release. The wheels unlocked. Ryan braced himself. "Laurel, push." Laurel shoved the gurney toward the broken panel. But before it reached the opening, a hand shot out from behind Locke's assistant. A hand gripping a surgical bone saw. It revved loudly. The missing third man stepped into view, wearing stolen scrubs, face half-shadowed. He pointed the buzzing blade at Maddie's belly, and with chilling calm, he said, "If she leaves this room, the baby dies first." The bone saw's shrill buzz filled the operating room, slicing through the air and freezing everyone in place. Laurel's breath caught. Ryan's heart stopped. Maddie, still conscious enough to hear the sound, whimpered a small, broken cry from deep inside her chest. The third man stepped closer, the blade pointed directly at Maddie's stomach. "Move," he warned, "and I end this right now." Laurel raised her trembling hands. "Please don't hurt her. She's barely conscious. You'll kill her. You'll kill the baby." "That's the point," he replied coldly. "A dead asset is better than a rescued one." Ryan saw red. He slammed his fist against the glass again. "You touch her, and I swear." The man twisted the saw toward him, smirking. "You think you're in control? You're the reason she's here. You're the reason we need the child. Blame yourself, Captain Brooks." Ryan's breath shook with fury. "I'll blame myself after I bury you." But the intruder wasn't intimidated. His eyes flicked between Laurel and Maddie like he was deciding which one to carve first. Locke wiped blood from his cheek, Laurel's earlier tray impact, then straightened his coat. "We are behind schedule. Do it." "No," Laurel cried, stepping between the blade and Maddie. "You'll go through me. That can be arranged, the intruder said, raising the saw. And then, something unexpected happened. Maddie moved. Barely, weakly, but unmistakably. Her hand lifted, shaking violently, and she pressed it protectively over her stomach. Tears streaked down her cheeks as she whispered hoarsely, "Don't touch my baby." The intruder hesitated, not from compassion, but from surprise. Sedated mothers didn't move like that. They didn't fight. But Maddie did. And that second of hesitation was enough. Laurel grabbed a metal tray and slammed it down on the intruder's wrist. The saw flew from his hand, crashing against the floor and skidding under a storage cart. The intruder roared in pain. Locke lunged toward Laurel. Ryan didn't think he exploded into motion, slamming his shoulder into the OR door with every ounce of strength left in his body. The emergency glass shattered. He barreled through the frame, ignoring the slicing pain across his arms. He was inside. Finally, inside. Laurel gasped with relief. "Ryan, get her out," he barked, rushing toward the gurney. But the intruder recovered fast. He shoved Laurel aside and grabbed the nearest instrument scalpel, glinting under the overhead lights. Locke seized a second, moving to flank Ryan. "Captain Brooks," Locke hissed, "you should have stayed outside." Ryan didn't listen. He flipped a stainless steel tray into Locke's path, sending instruments clattering across the floor. Locke slipped. Ryan charged past him, reaching Maddie's side. Her eyes fluttered open. "Dad, I've got you, sweetheart," he whispered, voice cracking. "I'm here now." He unlocked the restraints with shaking hands. Maddie gasped with relief as her wrists came free. "Ryan!" Laurel shouted. The intruder was up again, fury twisting his features. He lunged at Ryan with the scalpel. Laurel tackled him from the side. They crashed into a surgical cart, sending supplies flying. The scalpel skidded across the room. The intruder grabbed Laurel by the throat. Ryan grabbed Maddie's gurney. "Hold on," he told her, and shoved it toward the emergency exit. But the red lights above the door blared. "Lockdown, no exit." The intruder tightened his grip on Laurel, snarling, "If she leaves this room, we all die." Ryan reached for a defibrillator paddle. Electric, charged, heavy. "Let go of her," he growled. The intruder smirked. "Make me." Ryan pressed the paddle against the man's back. The jolt sent him convulsing across the floor. Laurel gasped for air. Ryan pulled her up, steadying her. But before either could move, a gunshot cracked through the air. They froze. Locke stood near the sink, holding a firearm he'd retrieved from beneath the counter. The barrel pointed directly at Maddie's heart. "Step away from the girl," Locke said softly, "or I finish this myself." Dr. Adrian Locke's gun glinted beneath the harsh surgical lights, steadied by hands too confident for a healer. Maddie lay helpless on the gurney, her breaths thin and uneven, her baby's heartbeat fluttering desperately on the monitor. Ryan stood between Locke and his daughter, chest rising with controlled fury, bleeding, exhausted, outnumbered, but unbroken. "Step aside," Locke repeated, voice almost gentle. "She needs to die for this to end cleanly." Ryan shook his head once. "You picked the wrong family." Locke exhaled impatiently. "Captain Brooks, always dramatic." He cocked the gun. Laurel, still coughing from the intruder's attack, grabbed Ryan's sleeve. "Don't move, he'll shoot through you." "That's the only way he gets to her," Ryan said. Locke smirked. "So be it." But the moment he steadied his aim, a sound split the air. A beep, another, then a continuous, rising alarm. The fetal heart monitor spiked dangerously. Locke cursed. "Not now, she's destabilizing." "She's terrified," Ryan growled. "Because of you." Locke jerked the gun back toward Maddie. "Then let's end the fear." He fired. But Ryan was already moving. He slammed the rolling surgical lamp upward, smashing it into Locke's wrist. The shot veered wildly, shattering the overhead glass panel instead of hitting Maddie. Locke screamed, dropping the gun long enough for Ryan to dive for it. The intruder Laurel had stunned earlier surged back to consciousness. He lunged toward the gun. Laurel grabbed a metal IV pole and swung it with every ounce of strength left in her. It crashed into his temple. He collapsed instantly. Ryan reached the gun first. He aimed it directly at Locke. Locke froze, clutching his injured wrist. "You won't shoot me. You're federal law enforcement. You're bound by." Ryan pulled the trigger. The bullet hit Locke's knee, sending him crashing to the floor in agony. "I'm bound," Ryan said coldly, "to my daughter." Laurel rushed to Maddie's side. She's fading, Ryan. We need to move her now. Ryan holstered the gun and lifted Maddie into his arms. She felt weightless and fragile, her head falling onto his shoulder. Dad, she whispered weakly, don't let them. I won't, he promised, voice cracking. No one's touching you again. Alarms continued blaring throughout the hospital's security, flooding every hall. Ryan and Laurel raced toward the fire exit while agents stormed in. Gunfire echoed behind them as the intruder tried crawling for Locke's dropped weapon, but agents tackled him before he reached it. When Ryan pushed through the stairwell door, a blast of cold air hit them the rooftop. Wind whipped around them, carrying sirens from the streets below. A rescue chopper hovered, blades slicing the night sky. An agent leaned out. Captain Brooks, over here. Ryan sprinted across the rooftop, cradling Maddie. Her eyes fluttered open again barely. Is my baby alive? She breathed. Ryan pressed his forehead to hers. Your baby is a fighter, just like you. Tears slipped from her eyes. Relief. Fear. Hope. Laurel helped them aboard. Ryan, her blood pressure's crashing. We need altitude clearance now. As the helicopter lifted, the hospital shrank beneath them, sirens, flashing lights, law enforcement swarming every doorway. Maddie's breathing slowed. Her fingers loosened around Ryan's. Stay with me, he begged. Maddie, stay. Her lips moved. I'm tired. Her heartbeat dropped on the monitor. No, Ryan shouted. No, stay awake. Laurel grabbed the medical kit, ripping it open. I need to stabilize her, or we'll lose both of them. The monitor flatlined for half a second. Then again, and again, Ryan felt his soul tear open. But just as Laurel prepared the emergency injection, Maddie drew a sharp breath. Her voice trembled out, almost inaudible. Dad, my water just broke. So, that's how our story closes tonight. And if you are still here, listening all the way to this moment, then something in this journey must have touched your heart in a real, personal way. Maybe it reminded you of your own strength. Maybe it reminded you of someone you love. Or maybe it whispered a truth you once forgot. You deserve safety, dignity, and peace. You know, the ancient Stoics said, the bravest thing you can do is to protect your own soul. And Maddie's fight wasn't just survival. It was a reminder that even in the darkest rooms, a single act of courage becomes a doorway. Healing isn't loud. It isn't quick. But as Marcus Aurelius wrote, what stands in the way becomes the way. And maybe tonight, in some quiet corner of your life, you needed to hear that too. If this story stayed with you, if it made you feel something, please let us know. Hit like, share it with someone who might need the reminder, and subscribe so you can walk with us through the next journey. We're still here, and we're healing together.